Ladies and gentlemen, sometimes we sit back and ask ourselves, are we living in a horror film or a dark comedy? Because in Zimbabwe, the government never misses a crisis. It monetizes it. And the worst part, they don't even try to hide it anymore. The script has been so predictable. You could recite it in your sleep. First, there's a scandal or a disaster that everyone already knows about. Then a government official pops up with a shocking revelation, usually something the rest of us have been screaming about for a decade. A few crocodile tears later, ministers start touring places they should have been supervising all along. Next thing, boom. A mega million contract is announced. No tender, no shame, no accountability, just good old-fashioned looting, ZANU-PF style. Now, let's take a cue from Tino Machakaire, this week's star performer in the theatre of national deception. The youth minister, a loyal disciple of the gospel according to Rigananda, suddenly woke up from his gold-plated dreams and discovered that Zimbabwe's public hospitals are collapsing. Imagine that. You'd think this guy stumbled upon a hidden tomb in the middle of a desert. I visited a relative at a public hospital, that's him on X, and I was deeply moved. Moved, brother. The rest of us were moved into early graves a long time ago by the same healthcare system. But sure, welcome to the land of the living dead. Have a seat. And then he dares the unthinkable. He addresses the president. Yes, the one who lives in the clouds of fuel, convoys, and invisible inaugurations. Yes, I'm talking about the same one that suffers from a cognitive disease called dementia. Please, Your Excellency, Tino, please, take time from your busy schedule to visit the hospitals. Busy schedule? From what? Sleeping through cabinet meetings? Planning which relative gets what farm? It would be hilarious if it weren't so bloody tragic. But let's be fair. Maybe Machakaire was sincere. Maybe seeing a loved one hooked up to nothing but faith in a failing ward finally broke through the concrete that surrounds most ministers' hearts. Or maybe, just maybe, it was step one of a classic ZANU-PF scam. You see, the genius of this regime isn't in governance, it's in theatre. When people complain about potholes, they import a single road truck, take a few photos and vanish. When people scream about power cuts, they do a ribbon cutting at a power plant that hasn't generated a spark since Ian Smith was in short pants. And when the healthcare crisis gets too loud, that's when they bring out the big guns. Enter the secret meeting behind closed doors, far away from the empty hospital beds and the bleeding nurses. A conclave of usual suspects assembles. Finance Minister Mthuli Ncube, that well-dressed mathematician of misery. Justice Minister Ziyambi, Master of Constitutional Gymnastics. Guvamatanga, Mangujga, and of course, because it wouldn't be a Zimbabwean haste without him, Chief Chigananda himself, Kuda Tagwirei. The men whose companies appear like mushrooms after a storm whenever there is public money to be stolen. They gather like vultures to discuss how to respond to the outcry. Not by fixing anything, no, that would be too easy, too ethical. Instead, it is rumored they cook up a plan to squeeze more money from the one group that's already on life support, the citizens. How? By slapping a 4-cent levy on every liter of fuel. That's right, motorists will now fund a $300 million health intervention they didn't ask for, they won't benefit from, and have no say in. But who is getting the contract? Not NatFarm, the actual government entity designed to supply medicines. No, that would be too sensible. The contract goes to a private company called Pendulum. And guess who owns Pendulum? Yes, Tagwire himself. The pendulum of corruption swings once again straight into his pockets. Now, because this is Zimbabwe, you can't loot in broad daylight without a little window dressing. So the PR department kicks in. Mtuli and Health Minister Douglas Mwambeshora suddenly develop an interest in warehouse visits. They show up at NatFarm with cameras in tow, looking thoughtful and serious as if the nation hadn't been bleeding for decades. Statements are released. We hear phrases like assessing operational challenges and strengthening the healthcare supply chain. Mutuli Ngcube's English. All the while, nurses are collapsing from exhaustion. The Zimbabwe Nurses Association releases a brutal statement about understaffing, lack of drugs, and impossible workloads. But does anyone listen? Of course not. The ministers are too busy filming their next fake documentary, How to Pretend to Care and Get Paid. The Minister of Health, not wanting to be left out of the circus, attacks Machakaire for mischievous comments. They said he's exaggerating, that people are blowing things out of proportion, as if we haven't been burying relatives due to lack of basic medication, as if our hospitals are not full of the smell of hopelessness and detour. But this is the game. Discredit the whistleblower, shift the focus, and keep the money train rolling. But wait, there was an accident in Bedbridge. Didn't we see patients in makeshift plasters made out of cardboard box? An artist was involved in an accident, went to Harare Hospital, and died asking for pain ease. You know what's worse? This isn't just a robbery, it's a psychological warfare. The government wants us to believe that suffering is normal, that improving surgery with kitchen knives and treating patients without antibiotics is just a part of African life, that we should clap for them when they hand billions to their friends while children die from diarrhea, that we should thank them for responding to a crisis they created. And to be honest, it hurts. It hurts knowing that even when our voices rise in outrage, all they see is another opportunity. It hurts knowing that every protest, every trending hashtag, every tearful tweet is nothing more than market research for their next scam. It hurts watching our nation become a business model for elite enrichment while the rest of us scrape by on powdered paracetamol and faith. But it also fuels us, because every time they try to gaslight us into silence, we get louder. Every time they fake a hospital tour, we expose the empty words. Every time they cook up another fake solution, we trace the money trail. And we do it not because we enjoy being angry, but because someone has to tell the truth in a country drowning in lies. So here is what really happened. There was never a health plan. There was a loot plan. Tino Machagaire's post was the spark. The secret meeting was the fuel. The fuel levy is the theft. The 300 million contract is the price. And the media circus, that's just the confetti they throw on top of your grave. But as long as we are still breathing, as long as there's still data on our phones and rage in our bones, we'll keep speaking. Because this story isn't just about hospitals. It's about a government that profits from pain, a regime that feeds on decay, a system so broken its only working part is corruption. So to everyone watching, don't be fooled by the photo ops. Don't let their fake concern drown out your real suffering. And whatever you do, don't stop talking. Because silence is their oxygen and truth is our fire. If you are as fed up as we are, hit that subscribe button right now. Share this, comment, make noise, because if we don't tell our story, Rigananda will tell it for us. And in their version, the looters are always the heroes. This is Zimwaves TV, and this was the anatomy of a state-sanctioned scam. Let's burn their lies with the flame of the truth.